Geordie Journo's back here at the Newcastle United training ground where myself and Jordan have been speaking to Eddie Howe ahead of the all-important Premier League trip to Old Trafford to face Manchester United on Wednesday night. Huge game, Jordan, in Newcastle's season.
Massive.
Defining.
It is, it potentially is defining. I mean, Newcastle will avoid defeat tomorrow. They guarantee a top 7 finish. They guarantee finishing above Manchester United for the first time in Premier League history. So lots riding on it. A massive game, and what a great time to play Manchester United. Eddie Howe said there probably makes them a dangerous opponent, but I would argue the complete opposite. I think they've been really, really poor in recent weeks. It always seems to be with Manchester United that they always have bad seasons but are still somehow up there. But the fear factor from Old Trafford now for me just isn't there anymore. You usually go to Old Trafford fearing the worst, but I'm going to Old Trafford tomorrow thinking that Newcastle can't get a result, and I haven't said that many times. They proved that in November, when they won in the Carabao Cup. Now obviously totally different game, totally different occasion, but I think Newcastle can go there and get a result, and if they do that, then they've got one foot in Europe, if you like. Obviously finishing 7th is dependent on the FA Cup winners. Obviously you'll be supporting Manchester City that weekend. You'll be supporting Manchester City regardless where Newcastle finish, because of course if they finish 6th, then if Man United were to win the FA Cup, the 6th would then become a Conference League spot. So ideally you want to finish 6th because it guarantees Europe, whatever, doesn't matter what competition. But to even get top 7 with the situation that Newcastle will be in this season, I think would be very, very good. And of course if they get a result there tomorrow, then they will guarantee that. So no, it's a massive game. It is defining, as you mentioned there.
Yeah, Eddie Howe was trying to get people were trying to bait Eddie Howe into sort of sparking this Manchester United rivalry and sort of downplaying Manchester United as a club. Like Old Trafford, is that fear factor gone? As Jordan said, Eddie Howe would not get drawn into comments like that. He said Manchester United, always a difficult place to go, and I tend to agree. I think Manchester United, as bad as they look at times, they always manage to, like last season I thought they were generally quite bad, yet still finished above. Newcastle still finished 3rd in the Premier League. This season they've been considerably worse, yet still, if they beat Newcastle tomorrow night, European football becomes a possibility. So yeah, I think it's going to be a tough game regardless, as they all are, trips to Old Trafford, but I think Newcastle can go into it with a bit of confidence, providing their key players are fit, because Eddie Howe, whether it's a bit of maybe pre-match teasing, suggesting his squad's looking a little bit more depleted than it is, or whether he's just being completely honest with it. Fabian Schär is a doubt for the game. Callum Wilson hasn't trained. Alexander Isak hasn't trained. So your 2 strikers haven't trained ahead of this game. I mean, they may well be training in about 20 minutes time.
That's why the shutters are down.
Yeah, that's why we can't see. But yeah, Eddie Howe said basically a late call would be made on Isak and Wilson in particular.
Yeah, so if you read Eddie Howe's comments without thinking anything else in isolation, you would think, oh well, them 2 players are a doubt, but knowing Eddie Howe and how misleading he is on team news, shall we say, maybe not misleading, but
keen to protect his team news.
Doesn't give anything away, so yeah, he's made it sound like Newcastle could be without a senior striker on the eve of their biggest game of the season, but I would be shocked if at least one of them wasn't involved. I think Isak is probably a banker to be involved, to be honest. Didn't train on Monday but should train today. Wilson, of course, I think it's both illness, so that with both of them. Wilson, maybe, if there is one to miss, I would predict it would be Wilson, but I suspect probably both of them will be involved, at least Isak anyway. So Eddie Howe never with these team news, he's always a bit off, shall we say. So I think is it mind games, because Manchester United fans reading that, you've got think about the Manchester United's defensive problems. Casemiro, Johnny Evans played at centre half at the weekend, and Manchester United fans, and even potentially Eric Ten Hag as read and go, two of their strikers are.
I'm sure he's tuning into Newcastle World
Well,
Shields
he
Gazette,
might see up the Daily
he's
Mail.
Celebrating right now. He's like, get in, Jordan Cronin's.
But just builds up a feeling. We know Eddie Howe and his team news that it isn't always, take with a pinch of salt. Manchester United fans don't necessarily know that, so they could be reading that story today going, it's a boost for us. But Newcastle don't have them two players available, and then he rock up at Old Trafford tomorrow, and Alexander Isak and Callum Wilson are both in the start 11. I wouldn't put it past Eddie Howe, but one of them will be involved, and it'll probably be Isak.
Yeah, this isn't us bad mouthing Eddie Howe, by the way. He's publicly admitted to basically.
He has.
Taken liberties with team news and saying players have.
He's fooled the media a couple of times with these comments. It's we've all been.
But if Eddie Howe's saying it, it's a story. This is what he said. You have to almost report what he said, and then we can sort of sprinkle in what we know as well. And what we understand would be Alexander Isak will be involved, and Callum Wilson, if not tomorrow, would be back.
Yeah, he did say
Brentford,
that, didn't he?
You'd imagine. But we'll wait and see on that. And then Fabian Schär, Eddie Howe explained he's been sort of going between actual training and then working with the medical team as he looks to come back from a hamstring injury. Whether we'll see him before the end of the season, it initially looked unlikely. Now I'd expect we'll see him at least on the bench at some point in the final two games at least. But asked about whether Newcastle had missed Fabian Schär's qualities, which I certainly think they did against Brighton on Saturday, that sort of ability to play the ball out from the back and find particularly the wingers who always make those forward runs down the line. And Eddie Howe said, of course we missed his qualities, but then quickly praised Emil Kraft. So that's more or less the injury front covered. Again, covered the same ground regarding Nick Pope, Miguel Almiron, Joe Linton. Where do you bring those back in the team?
He said to me, he said, I would urge caution on any players that have been out with long-term injuries coming back into the team. He says he's got decisions to make. I mean, probably talk about team selections, probably a good place to start, because I think Joe Linton and Nick Pope should start tomorrow. I do look, the match sharpness thing maybe is a problem, but I've always said it, to get results you need your best players, and for as okay as Martin Dubravka's done, Nick Pope is ultimately a better goalkeeper. Joe Linton just brings that little bit of feistiness, aggression, bite in midfield. I think he brings a real good balance. So although Eddie Howe was urging caution, he said he would have conversations with the players and medical team before making a decision, but for me, as I said on the previous video, I would, with Nick Pope, I think he should have started at the weekend. Obviously I understood the reason why, because Eddie Howe explained how he was still building up his robustness, if you like, but surely another few days training under his belt, he should be in a good position. And Joe Linton, I do think Joe Linton should start, but he wasn't exactly looking at his sharp best on Saturday. But for me, they're just two key players, and I think having them two players on the team sheet just gives everyone a massive lift. So that's my 2 pence for. I think Eddie Howe should do it on Wednesday. Yeah,
I don't think Eddie Howe can really win with the goalkeeper situation, because unless whoever he picks ends up having a good game and Newcastle win, it's fine. But whoever he picks and Newcastle lose or draw, concede a sloppy goal, it's on his decision. I think putting Nick Pope back in for what is Newcastle's biggest game of the season after 5 months out is a massive call. Like, Nick Pope has to be perfect in that game, but then on the same page, Martin Dubravka, if he starts over Nick Pope, again can't afford to put a foot wrong. So pressure's on. I think you're right. If there was a time to start Nick Pope, it would have probably been the Brighton game, if not the Burnley game. But again, we don't see Nick Pope in training. Eddie Howe does. He knows how close he is to getting back in that team and actually performing at Premier League level. And I just think, based on Eddie Howe's comments, it sounds like, well, maybe they'll assess it further today, but it just sounds like his priority is the players who have been playing, who have, let's be honest, Newcastle are in good form heading into this game. So he would, I imagine, show some degree of loyalty to those players in particular. So I'd like to see Nick Pope back, but my head would say Martin Dubravka would keep his place against a team he played for twice last season as well.
Well, I mean, to be fair, Martin Dubravka played quite well in the Carabao Cup. Day now and then he started, didn't he?
Yeah.
As well. I mean, Newcastle's back line that day was, the two centre halves, Paul Dummett and Emil Kraft.
Kraft will be starting again, potentially.
Yeah, it does seem that way. I mean, injuries, Manchester United have got a lot of injuries, so I wonder if they'll be patched up in a similar way to what they were in that Carabao Cup game. Newcastle made lots of changes as well, but of course, we're 6 months down the line. Newcastle are probably in many ways as a squad in a better place, not just in terms of form. I think Newcastle only lost one of the last 8. Manchester United have only won one of their last 8. So in terms of form, Newcastle are in much better form. And I just think the squad situation as well, welcoming back the likes of Kieran Trippier, who I think we should come on to.
Yes.
Nick Pope, Joe Linton, Almiron. I think I've named them all.
Tino Livramento was out and came back in as well. There's players like that as well.
So this Newcastle squad, they've almost got players back at the right time, and okay, they might add something off the bench, but I think these players should be given an opportunity to start. As I've said there, I think to get results you need your best players, and the players I mentioned there, maybe Almiron was the one where I think maybe would come back in, but to be fair, I didn't think Jacob Murphy was great on Saturday against Brighton, but I also don't think Miguel Almiron was very good either. It was almost like an opportunity for him to come in and grasp it, because I think he was come on for the final 20 minutes, half an hour. And then within the space of coming on, he's mistimed his run to play Gordon in, and then he's took a dive in the box when he should have continued his run. So I think Murphy probably starts ahead of Almiron on default, but the other ones, as I mentioned, Pope, Joe Linton should be back in, and then Trippier, which for me, I missed out Trippier. I think Trippier starts. I think he's got to start.
I think his absence in the starting 11 on Saturday was glaring, because Tino Livramento, for all his qualities, all his good work he does, all his energy, final ball in isolation on Saturday was nowhere near
really
the level Newcastle need.
And
that was just that one game, and he's shown it on times this season. I even go back to the goal he scored where he was in the box. There's almost like he didn't know what to do, and he scored through opportunity rather than actual right, this is what I'm going to do, and decisiveness.
Ran the ball in the net, didn't he? Really?
So Tino Livramento, young lad, bags of potential. He's got a lot to learn from Kieran Trippier in that regard, and I think Kieran Trippier, had he been at full tilt, which he claims he is 100%,
he did,
had he started the game on Saturday, I think Newcastle may have scored a goal or two more. But all hypotheticals, but I think you're right. Kieran Trippier should come straight back into the starting lineup on Wednesday night at Old Trafford.
And then the left back situation, do you keep Lewis Hall or do you put Tino Livramento in if Trippier has to come back? One of Tino Livrento's best games in Newcastle shirt was probably his game at Old Trafford in the season, where he's made that surgeon done. He's won the I can't remember what it was. He's won the ball.
In his
drove
half,
forward. He's slipped Almiron in. Obviously, I think that was for 1-0. But he was electric that day. So do you stick with that and you put him on the left hand side? I think, although he was outstanding at right back that day, I think Livramento's performances, his best performances, probably come as a left back. Every time he seems to get an opportunity at right back, he seems to pick up a knock in the game, or he's missed the game. Just can't quite get into his groove. So does Eddie Howe look to play him on the left hand side if you bring Trippier back in, or do you stick with Lewis Hall, who, to be fair to him, has had a difficult opening 6 months, but it's probably one of Newcastle's form players in recent weeks.
He's been good. He's started 5 of the last 7, which is more. He started one of the first 30 or first 29 games. I think.
He made 4 starts in 6 months, whereas he's matched that. Bettered that total within the space of a month.
In terms of the Premier League, I think that Bournemouth game was his only start, and then he was hooked off at half time, and then this past month with the defensive injuries he's come into the side, and I think some games he's looked really, really quite good. I think the Burnley game, after a shaky start, he came into his own, certainly in an attacking sense. I thought on Saturday no one particularly stood up and made themselves counted. I thought Lewis Hall was okay in that game, but he's a player who certainly one for the future. But do you bring him out the team? Depends how Manchester United set up as well, and who Eddie Howe trusts, whether he wants to shift Tino Livramento back on the other side. You have to think as well, Tino Livramento during that game against Brighton looked to be struggling with his ankle as well. So
true,
there's that factor as well. It's almost like a recurring issue for Tino Livramento, so that will obviously be considered for Eddie Howe as well. Anything else on Manchester United or injuries you want to discuss, or do you want to
I think that's it, yeah.
move on in terms of pre-season now? Big news this morning. Get yourself on Skyscanner. Newcastle going to Japan.
Don't get yourself on Sky Scanner, you'll mess with the algorithms.
So yeah, probably the furthest journey Newcastle could have hoped for. 2 games in and around Tokyo at the end of July, start of August. Yeah, commercially driven.
Commercially driven, yeah. I mean, I don't think Eddie Howe's best pleased, to be honest.
No, you could tell. Watch a press conference, read between the lines.
I think he understands that commercially Newcastle have to do this, and this is because of PSR rules where you've literally got to drain every ounce of pennies money in terms of these trips so you can spend on new players and other areas as well. But for the players, next week Newcastle are finishing the season at Brentford, and then they've extended the season by a week by flying out to Australia, which isn't a short trip. Players involved in the European Championships, Copa America. I do wonder if there'll be a couple of knocks come the end of that Brentford game, so players can get out of that, because it is far from ideal to their preparations for the summer. And then of course you have a summer break, and then you come back, and then you've got to fly out to Tokyo at the back end of July, which we've been looking at ourselves, Dom, how to get to Tokyo. It's
not easy.
I mean, it'll be easier for Newcastle with a direct flight. Yeah. We might, if we go, we might be travelling via 5 different countries before we get there, but it's still a very, very long way. So Australia, Tokyo in the space of a couple of months, yeah, you could tell Eddie Howe, although wouldn't say it, isn't best pleased with that. But as I say, I think he understands a commercial point of view. So yeah, two games out there, Yokohama, and the team after that is Urawa. Yeah, we both said the same there.
Sorry, I'm not.
Yeah.
Japanese pronunciation isn't great. Yokohama, I think that's the second game. Yokohama, Urawa is
it, right? I think it's the wrong way around.
Yeah, so 2 big games, big stadiums as well.
Yeah, massive. Japan National Stadium, and
yeah, from where the World Cup final was played potentially. And obviously where Urawa play as well, big stadium. So a new part of the world for Newcastle to go in. I don't think they've been to Japan since the early 80s, so certainly in the modern era. Yeah.
Where did they go when Genius had that chip penalty?
Oh, that was the Asia Cup.
Yeah, where was that?
It wasn't in Japan.
It wasn't.
We were too young to.
Yeah,
I remember the penalty actually. It was too young to remember exactly where they were. It might have been Thailand or Singapore, somewhere like that.
Sounds right. Yeah.
Let us know in the comments.
Yeah.
We'll look it up after. But yeah, in terms of a new part of the world, that's when Newcastle going, and Peter Silverstone in the announcement actually recognised the Adidas deal and the ties Adidas have with Japan as being almost an influence, and that'll be nice because it'll be Newcastle wearing the new Adidas kit for one of the first times really after the opening pre-season usual games, which are yet to be announced. But yeah, this will be Newcastle's big pre-season trip, and yeah, wearing the new Adidas shirts, being in a new part of the world opens up new commercial opportunities. So from that respect, it's a good thing for supporters actually attending games or even watching games. There's obviously the time difference to consider as well, but for those supporters on the other side of the world, beneficial for them.
Yeah, I mean, going to all these new countries, the US, Australia, Japan, it's all done for a reason. I mean, we talk about the money side, of course, that's massive, but it is about building a fan base as well. And as you mentioned there, Newcastle haven't been in Japan in such a long time, since the early 80s or whenever it was. So I think, yeah, it's big for the club, but I understand from Eddie Howe's side, where I think ideally Eddie Howe would want to be locked up in the Austrian mountains, as he would a couple of years ago, not be bothered by anyone, do his intense training with his team, and Newcastle come back fully prepared for the Premier League season. I think all the travelling in pre-season would you'd probably rather not do.
Eddie Howe would rather not speak to us on a Tuesday or Friday as well.
He walked in the press conference this morning, he was like, nearly there.
Yeah.
It was like, he said, because he's got
one
more press
conference. He was in good spirits for a guy who doesn't have any strikers, apparently, allegedly.
Yeah.
So yeah, he was laughing, he was chipper, Eddie Howe.
Yeah, he is, yeah.
But yeah, I think Eddie Howe just wants to manage Newcastle United. He doesn't really care about the whole fluff and fanfare surrounding everything, but understands it's part of the game, and that's why, from the media side of things, there's obviously a lot of revenue to be generated in that regard. But yeah, if he didn't have to do press conferences, I'm sure he'd be a happy man.
Yeah. So one player that could be involved in the trip to Japan. This sequences on to my question I asked.
Brilliant.
Kuba Minteh will return to Newcastle United in the summer. Eddie Howe will cast his eye over Minteh in pre-season, so I suspect that might, although to be fair, it's late in, I'm going back on myself here, it's late in July, so maybe
we'll see him in pre-season
in some
respect,
yes.
Whether he goes to Japan, whether he's still there, because I imagine Feyenoord are obviously keen to take him back, if they'll want him involved in some respect in pre-season if they were to push forward with a deal. But yeah, Newcastle will certainly assess Kuba Minteh in some respect in pre-season, whether it's a Gateshead friendly, not that that's been confirmed, but you know what I mean.
Last 2 years I've played them, so yeah.
That early July friendly, it might be that. Well, then he goes to Australia. Because Gavin Paul's going to Australia. They're both playing in the same league. The league will be finished by then, the Eredivisie. So we'll see him then. And then another question asked, unless you want to keep talking about the Gambian winger.
No, I just think it's the right decision. I think we can see all these highlight reels and the goals that he scored in the Dutch league, but until you actually see him up close in the flesh, you don't know. So I think Newcastle are doing the right thing by just actually getting a first-hand look at him and then decide where he's at. So,
and he plays in a position Newcastle would actually look at naturally to strengthen potentially that sort of right wing, forward position, forward areas.
The man who could save Newcastle United millions in this summer transfer window.
Is that a title?
It's a soundbite, but I'm not sure it's right.
Yeah. He would save millions, or could make them millions if they chose to sell him. But that's a bridge to cross when it comes. So I asked about a new deal for Alex Murphy as well. Eddie Howe said potentially he could go out on loan in the future, but his short-term aim is to push the first team players closer and get in and around that first team setup, which he is at the moment. He's getting regularly on the bench. He's had a few minutes of Premier League football here and there, and then going into pre-season, that new deal and opportunity that you naturally get as a younger player in pre-season is going to be really important for him, because I mean, what we've seen of Alex Murphy, for a young lad, I mean, he could have a bright future for Newcastle if he does realise his potential.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you only have to cast your mind back to last pre-season, and that was when Alex Murphy really came through for me. Came on off the bench against Chelsea. I think Fabian Schär picked up an early injury when they played in the Premier League Summer Series. Was pretty faultless. Came on at left back, outstanding. And then the game that really stood out for me was he played centre half alongside Sven Botman for one of the Select Cup games, and it was like he was a seasoned pro. He was brilliant, and I think you don't see those flashes unless a player's got something, and I think you can say that Alex Murphy has got something about him. And I think even if Alex Murphy was to play a Premier League game, I think you would be quite comfortable with it. I think naturally as a young lad you would probably see fault in his game where he needs to brush up on, if you like, but in terms of a 19-year-old player, I think he's got lots of potential, and I think that new deal reflects that. He's only been here 2 years, and Newcastle have moved to give him a long-term contract. It shows how much Newcastle value him. So of course it does sound like Newcastle are going to bolster the defence this summer with maybe a couple of free agent signings, but Alex Murphy certainly isn't a bad option to have. I think maybe, depending on injuries, signings would probably benefit from a loan, because I think he needs games. I think it's great having all this first team experience, having the odd game there and then coming off the bench, for example, or playing in pre-season, but I think to build up that knowledge of the English game, whatever, the robustness, the strength, etc., just building into the English game, I think he probably needs a loan spell. I don't see, although I really rate him really highly, I don't see how he gets guaranteed games here anytime soon.
Well, I think it might be linked to Newcastle's European qualification, because I think the Conference League would lend itself quite well to Alex Murphy getting a decent chunk of minutes. Not to disregard the Conference League, because I'm sure both of us would snap your hand off to be for Newcastle to be in that competition next season, even, but potentially Europa League too. So I think it depends, because you see the likes of Elliot Anderson benefited so much from a loan move. Lewis Miley benefited from not having a loan move and actually staying part of the first team, and then injuries gave him that opportunity, and now he's almost possibly surpassed even a loan move. He could still still go out naturally. But yeah, in terms of Alex Murphy, what would you say his level is? Because we haven't seen much of him, but when he has played Premier League against Premier League opposition, he has done well. So that's obviously not a loan move for him, Premier League, but what would you say? Is it Championship, League One? Is it lower? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you probably
speaking in hypotheticals.
Yeah,
this
probably,
is just our opinion.
I mean, looking at it, you'd probably naturally say Championship, because does a Premier League team go out and sign Alex Murphy?
No.
Probably not. So I think Championship level, if he was to get a loan there, would be a real positive one. Having said that, though, I do think he's capable of playing Premier League football. I'm not saying right this instance.
Big claims.
I'm not saying right this instance. Eddie Howe start Alex Murphy against Manchester United, and he needs to be the starting centre half. It's not what I'm saying, but as I say, I think we've seen flashes to prove that he has got the ability to come in and do a job in the Premier League. But as I say, he needs games.
That's
and
the thing.
I just don't see. I know you mentioned the commentary there, but I just don't see how he gets any kind of regular game time at Newcastle within the next year and a bit. I think in January, there hadn't been all them injuries, I think Alex Murphy probably would have been a shoe-in to go out on loan. I know the club looked at loaning them out, but of course injuries dictated that. So I know you've got 2 centre halves out with injuries now. You then hopefully, as I say, got at least 1 or 2 coming in on free agent deals, sort of put some fill down the pecking order. But then of course you've got the left back spot. But is Alex Murphy what is Alex Murphy? Is he a left back? I think he's versatile.
And that sounds like a fire alarm.
It sounds like a fire alarm.
Fire at the Newcastle United training ground. Right, the fire alarm has stopped. Danger averted. Jordan, you left the room. Good firefighting from you. So yeah, Alex Murphy will wrap it up on him there. Yeah, I think what he needs is football. If it's a choice between a Championship loan or even a League One loan, if he was guaranteed football in the League One loan, just playing regular men's football will benefit him. Scottish Premiership, something you could also look at as well, but again, guaranteed football is what you want, because we've seen with someone like Garang Kuol, who's been on 2 loans now and never really been able to get his way into the first team and get regular first team football. That's something Newcastle's loan managers, the likes of Shola Ameobi, Peter Ramage, will have to manage and get on top, because Alex Murphy is a real talent based on what we've seen so far. And yeah, I'll quickly touch on it. I'm conscious of the time, but you mentioned potential incomings defensively. Tosin Adebayo looks like it's getting closer.
Yeah, it's sounding promising, which for me I think is a really good bit of business by Newcastle. I think there was a bit of interest there last summer, I believe. I wrote a story last summer saying how Newcastle should sign Tosin. I'm not going to even try and pronounce his second name because I butcher pronunciation of names, but yeah, I think a really good signing. I know obviously there's talks out with Lloyd Kelly as well, but to pick up in this instance, to pick up Tosin, a Premier League experienced player, schooled from Manchester City's academy, say being a regular in Fulham's team for quite a while now, racked up I think nearly 150 appearances, comfortable with the ball, which Eddie Howe likes. He just look at Fabian Schär and how progressive he is with the ball and how the way he carries the ball forward. Tosin is able to do a bit of that as well. So yeah, I think getting these free agents over the line is really important, because although free agents cost money in terms of agent fees, sign-on fees, even higher wages because they come out a transfer fee, it almost allows Newcastle to dedicate a little bit more money to strengthen other areas. So you can get a free agent defender in theory. You could then go, well, I've got a defender in now, I can then go and splash X amount of pounds on signing a right forward or a midfielder. So it's all about squad building, isn't it? And getting Tosin in is a real positive move. And then, as I say, hopefully it can free Newcastle's budget up to start looking and prioritising other areas. Yeah, and not to be too negative, but just to spark a bit of conversation, when was the last time Newcastle had a successful free agent signing? You going back to Demba Ba? Because certainly Jeff Hendrick and Ryan Fraser have not quite fulfilled or realised their potential at Newcastle United. You've stumped us now. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. I think Demba Ba. He's like the one. Came on a free. Demba Ba was brilliant. One of the best strikers Newcastle have had. Don't really sign free agents, do they, Newcastle? No. Actually, there'll be a reason for it as well, because like you say, wages. Mike Ashley wouldn't have
broke a wage structure to sign certain players. So the calibre of free agents Newcastle have got, the likes of Ryan Fraser, Jeff Hendrick, are players that other clubs probably weren't too keen on in that Newcastle bracket anyway. So yeah,
it's had interest from elsewhere. Tossen, sounds like Newcastle have fought off quite a few fellow Premier League and European teams if they are to get over the line. So you're not a bad player if you've got a lot of interested parties. So yeah, it sounds like Tossen has been impressed by Newcastle United in terms of the project where they want to go. Eddie Howe is a manager who has continuously proved that he can improve any player. I don't think there's a player in this Newcastle squad that hasn't improved under Eddie Howe. So for me, that's the perfect situation for any player looking at a manager and go and look at and go there and get better.
Yeah, and there's a potential opening for him even in the first team. When you look at Sven Botman, Jamal Lascelles out injured, he will have a chance almost to prove himself from the get-go, whereas other clubs in and around Newcastle probably have quite a firm, well, probably Manchester United have quite a firm centre-back setup. So yeah, we'll end it there. Word from our sponsors, Jordan?
Yes, so we are sponsored by Four Rivers Financial Planning, providing holistic financial planning on pensions and investments. So please check out Four Rivers Financial Planning. See the logo, I think it'll be in this corner here. So yeah, big thanks to them for sponsoring us. Hope you guys can check them out.
Just thinking of the way Newcastle have named it, like the Stack powered by Seller, Geordie Journos powered by Four Rivers Financial Planning.
We are powered. We've got a new lease of life since Four Rivers came in and sponsored us. So no, a big thank you to them, and yeah, check them out if you can, guys.
But in the meantime, if you like what we do, please remember to like, comment, share, subscribe, ring the bell for all your latest Geordie Journos content. Myself and Jordan will be at Old Trafford tomorrow, joined by Liam Kennedy as ever. So yeah, we'll see you there on Wednesday night.